Massachusetts on the North Shore, and I'm running for state senate there against Bruce Tarr. I'm running in no small part because I believe that the right to life, as enshrined in our Declaration of Independence and in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, should also mean the right to live. And if you've been following along with us today, well, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to hear more moving stories about the brokenness of the healthcare system in this country. So I thought I'd just add my voice to the chorus and tell you a little bit of my healthcare story, which absolutely helped motivate me to run for office with single-payer healthcare in my platform. So with that, here's my healthcare instance number one. I was very active in high school. I was in theater, choir, cross country, and track and field. In the summer days leading up to senior year, I remember a 5 to 6 mile training run where I was finally catching up with the varsity team after 3 years in junior varsity. After the run, I got in my small sedan to head home, adrenaline racing, feeling alive. I began my drive home at the steady speed limit of 35 miles per hour on a backcountry road filled with twists and turns. And as I came around just such a turn, I see a large automobile, probably an SUV, speeding towards me in my lane. I swung my wheel desperately to the right towards the curb, and the other car steered inexplicably to its left, plowing directly into my car. I later learned that the other driver was a runner from Japan, who had just left a plane in a rural regional airport to train in the U.S. and hadn't decisively determined which side of the road was the right one to drive on until he saw my car and decided the left side was definitely the proper side of the road to use. My seatbelt in my car saved my life. A combined speed between the two cars in excess of 60 miles per hour had crumpled the driver's side of my front bumper, fender, and hood about 3/4 of the way to where I was sitting, but my steering wheel, my pedals, and dashboard were intact. At first I felt nothing. Then as I stretched to check myself, a searing pain coursed across the back of my neck and down my spine. I called my mom and told her not to worry, and as luck would have it, a fire station 1 minute away heard the accident and sent an ambulance. As it turned out, I had no operable damage, just permanent soft tissue damage in my back. At one point I was told they could do exploratory back surgery to attempt to repair it, but it would be extremely expensive, potentially very risky, and there was no guarantee the surgery would improve my pain. I wore a neck brace for the first month or so of my senior year, and many of my friends and family will tell you that I looked like I was operating in a fog for much of that month. In the midst of that fog, I signed a decent-sized settlement, but I came to find that it wouldn't be close to enough. Since then, I've tried literally 20 different types of physical therapy, chiropractic, occupational therapy, acupuncture, etc., but I still live with chronic pain 15 years later. Single-payer healthcare would mean I wouldn't need to worry about whether I could afford the cost of that ambulance ride or the cost of getting better for that matter. The focus would just be on the work to get better. Here's my healthcare instance number 2. I started taking seasonal allergy medication in my early teenage years for debilitating hay fever and itchy eyes. By the time I finished high school, I was taking 3 different intense allergy medications, 2 of which required prescriptions. Several years passed where I believed I'd be on these medicines forever. But after college, in the midst of an intense tech startup job, and in conjunction with recovering a past memory from my youth of, and let this be your first content warning, in conjunction with recovering a past memory of my youth of chronic sexual assault by one person, I started to notice increasing levels of stomach pain and acid reflux. My new doctor diagnosed eosinophilic esophagitis and reactive gastropathy, 2 fancy ways of saying that my stomach lining and esophagus have been damaged, likely by a combination of internalized stress from my work and facing my previous assaults, as well as prolonged use of allergy meds containing decongestants with pseudoephedrine. I was later told that, though I'd been a patient to several doctors over the years, the fact that I'd been prescribed and re-prescribed these drugs for years and was never told about the risk it could pose to my long-term health could be grounds for a medical malpractice lawsuit. As someone who, until very recently, worked in a restaurant and who's not taking in any income during my run for state senate, I'm hesitant to this day to visit a doctor for fear that I won't be able to afford the diagnostics or treatment for ongoing abdominal pain. And I can tell you stories upon stories of fellow servers and the tricks we use to avoid a trip to the doctor we know we can't afford, preferring athletic tape, super glue, and a shift cover to fiscal insolvency and possibly bankruptcy or worse. And that leaves healthcare instance number 3. As I mentioned, and let this be your final content warning, I recovered the memories of several instances of sexual assault by one person during my younger years. My memories were triggered in adulthood following a conversation with my assaulter, who I then considered my friend. Most don't realize how quickly trauma can embed itself in your psyche and how adept your brain is at protecting you, albeit incompletely, from the worst events of your life. But after apologizing profusely through tears, my assaulter threatened suicide if I spoke publicly about that person's actions. So while I had established some confidence shortly after the memories came to light, for several reasons I retained the burden of keeping my assaulter's identity a secret from the public, although my ability to tell my story, and mental health for that matter, is frankly harmed by that secret. In addition to physical health issues arising from this trauma, I've sought many types of therapy, and the therapies that have helped are not well covered by my Mass Health public insurance plan in Massachusetts. Sexual violence where the survivors are cisgender, heterosexual men like me, is not a kind of trauma that's particularly well accepted, but I take it as a responsibility of mine to speak for them. And frankly, when we speak about the importance of passing mass care in Massachusetts, the New York Health Act in New York, and national improved Medicare for all at the federal level, mental health care is too often pushed to the side of the discussion. I'm just one person, and I certainly have more to share on my experience with healthcare, but take this bit of my story, together with the other stories that you've heard and that I hope you'll hear through the rest of this morning, as just a tiny subset of what is a massive nationwide crisis. Too many people have given up hope when our president says he'll veto Medicare for all, and our governor in the Bay State where I live is deeply bought into so-called moderate small government conservatism that will require a veto-proof majority to overcome. But your average Bay Stater, your average New Yorker, your average American knows that we need universal health care, and preferably before the next major pandemic, please. Thank you to everyone for being here today and everyone at home fighting against this injustice.